What's up, guys? It's me, Tim, with the Gutter Growth Podcast. I'm pretty excited about today's episode. I've been following Dan Antonelli for a while now. He's the branding king, founder of KickCharge Creative, and he's also an author of a book, Branded Not Blended. What's going on, Dan?
What's up, Mr. Tim? How you doing, brother?
Good to catch up. How you doing today?
Good.
So, man, how did you fall into branding?
Yeah, believe it or not, like this is actually we're starting our 31st year in business here, which is crazy. We have a team of about 50 plus people, which also blows my mind. But literally I started when I was 15 years old, and I actually started lettering service vans, hand painted sign work and things like that. And I can remember doing a truck lettering job for a home service company in my parents' backyard. Literally, I was 15 years old, and I remember being so excited when I had finished this lettering job, and then seeing that truck in the community later on, and I'd be like, "Hey, I did that," and so there was an aspect of that I really enjoyed and really loved, and it's just kind of wild to me. It's 40 years later, I'm 55 now, and I still get excited when I see my work out in the wild, or where I travel different parts of the country and see our work out there. So it's been a pretty remarkable journey. I've certainly been obsessed with lettering, with logos, with branding from a very early age. And I consider myself very fortunate that I was able to latch onto something very early that I was passionate about. Got to work at a sign shop when I was 17 years old and learned a ton from a master sign painter. And what's crazy is a lot of his influence and what he taught me about layout and composition and legibility and even branding is evident in my work today. And him and I are still friends. It's pretty cool. We get to hang out once in a while. And, I've just been very, very fortunate with some of the people that I've connected with over the years. And, we get to build brands that change lives. I can't think of a better way to spend your day. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's like one of the most important things in a business too.
It's a big piece, and part of the reason why I wrote the book is it's something that a lot of people get wrong, right away. As soon as they start the company, whether it's naming or just the logo not working properly or the truck not being designed well. So I wanted to put like everything that I had learned over the last 20 or 30 years into a book, and hopefully it helps people. Honestly, like you don't make any money at all writing books. So it certainly wasn't because I expected to make a lot of money, but I would, constantly see guys making some of these very fundamental errors very early on in their entrepreneurial journey. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be cool if, people got this book just as they were ready to start or very early on, and they could understand more about how brand is really going to affect their journey and how having a strong brand will make that journey so much easier.
And you'd say that starts with the naming of the business?
Naming is typically the first thing most home service contractors get wrong on day one. So whether they use initials like, J&H Gutters, or they use their last name, those are typically the two worst things you can ever name your business. And so they will spend just a lifetime working to overcome that fundamental flaw in their marketing strategy, which is the name. And we do a ton of naming here, or renaming, when we have situations where there's deficiencies in their current name that really can't be solved with just rebranding alone. And so it's a very expensive sort of thing to revisit later on. In an ideal world, you solve that on day one, or you understand how to name a business from day one. And I get it. Like, listen, there really has never been a book about home service branding. Like, there isn't one that existed until I wrote this book. So I understand why maybe people didn't really understand a lot of what goes into naming. Like, naming is actually the biggest chapter in the entire book because it's so important. And I think even if you read the book now and you've already established, it'll give you some great ideas and some great tips on maybe what you might think about if you ever wanted to rename.
And even if someone did name it wrong, it's probably worth the expense to backtrack and
Yeah.
correct it, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and there's a method to doing it so that you don't lose traction. We've done a lot of renames for, especially for gutter companies. We've done a surprising number of renames for gutter companies, and some of the growth post rebrand has been remarkable. Like Utterly Gutters is, I think, is a great example of a company that was renamed, and then subsequent to the rename, they just exploded, and they became a household name in their community. They became that 5 mile famous, which is a concept I talk about in the book. And those are all just the things that we strive for. And we do those things so that, again, we're just less dependent on other paid sources for our leads. So if everyone within 5 miles of the community that you serve knew you existed, we would not need to pay Google nearly as much for every single lead that we are struggling to get in. People would just already know our name, and then they would type our name into Google, and it's not going to cost us nearly as much as gutter company near me, right? That's where we're going to start paying for those leads, and it sucks. But in the book, I talk about the fact that I think it's like 85% of homeowners, I should say, do not know the name of a home service contractor before they hire one. Now imagine what that means, right? That means that you're invisible to 85% of the people that you are trying to actually work for. They don't even know you exist. So what do? They go on Google and they type in, search terms, and you spend a ton of money on SEO, which you still should be doing, but you also spend a ton of money on PPC and LSA and all those other things. But what about if they just knew your name, right? What would that mean to your business, literally, if everyone within 5 miles of your shop knew you existed? And so we talk a lot in the book about techniques used to sort of become that 5 mile famous. What are the things you should be doing? Everything from your site signs to your uniforms to the truck wraps. How do all those things function and need to function in order to become top of mind for a homeowner? And that's ultimately the goal of good branding.
So what do you do like to come up with a good name? You're thinking of like every way you could play off of it, or?
Yeah, I mean, you certainly are thinking about maybe visuals that would connect the brand name with the actual mark or the logo itself. So for Utterly Gutters, like there's a surfing cow, right? And it's very remarkable. It's very different. It certainly does not look like every other gutter company. And I always say too, like one way to check whether or not you have a brand that's good or maybe something that blends in is go on Google and type in gutter company logo, and you're going to see a whole bunch of images that pop up. And if yours looks like one of those images, well, why would anyone remember your name? But would they remember a cow that's surfing on a gutter? Probably more than just the rooftop logo with the pitch and a couple of gutter symbols, right? So you think about names also from a visual perspective, like what visual do they convey? And secondly, you think about names that help people connect or feel something, right? So that's another thing. And lastly, what would you expect to get if you hired that company? So we call that brand promise. So what is the promise inferred by that particular brand name? So if you've got a brand name that makes me feel like I'm going to get something like an amazing experience, those will always be superior, again, than a last name based brand or initial based brand, which will, those types of brands, you have to spend a lot of money to have people believe that there is a expectation associated with it. All that brands are really trying to do is control what Mrs. Jones thinks about hiring you before she hires you. Like, it's not complicated. It's like, what does she think? If she saw that van parked on her neighbor's driveway, what does she think she would get if she hired you? Right.
So it's basically, it's public perception is what you're saying.
It's definitely perception, and it's all about really how much can we control that perception with the brand. And I think the interesting thing that plays off of that perception is how it affects the KPIs that matter most to a small business. So you look at the KPIs like booking rates, close rates, average tickets, even marketing spend. Those are all things that are drastically affected by the brand itself, right? When you go there and you're telling Mrs. Jones that it's going to be, $2,000 to clean the gutters or install new gutters, whatever the case may be, and she's got estimates from other people for $1,500. Well, why does she think that there's a reason to pay a premium for your service. And a lot of times that's the problem, is there isn't a reason in her mind why she should pay a premium for your service. And therefore she's going to choose the less costly option, right? So what we do is we try to marry up how well of a service you perform with how well the brand personifies that. And I think that that's really, you see guys that struggle to try to raise their average ticket. It's not because they don't provide a great service. It's largely because they're not perceived to provide a great service.
We're not perceiving the value.
Exactly. So what would happen to your business if you looked as good as the service you actually performed? That's the question, right? So the people that we work with are people that perform great service, just don't look like they perform great service, right? So marrying those realities is usually a win, right? Because I can get someone to look like they perform a great service. Of course, I can't control what happens after they ring the doorbell, but imagine that they provide great service. They got 5-star reviews, like they're killing it on all those benchmarks. But if I saw it on my neighbor's driveway, I can't get there yet. I don't think that they're amazing. Like I've got to do more homework. Maybe I read the reviews. Maybe I do stuff like that. So, I think that that's, some of the numbers and some of the data behind the rebrands and the effect on average tickets are they're crazy. They're insane. Like they're almost unbelievable because you would say, well, it's just a logo, or it's just a truck wrap, or it's just a new website. How does that affect things? And it's, it's the same reason why would you pay more for a Mercedes when you could buy a Nissan?
Yeah.
Well, I believe that the Mercedes is better. Is it actually better? Probably. But my perception of that brand is that it has a higher prestige. So I'm willing to pay more for that because I believe there's value in paying more for that. So I think a lot of people forget there's a lot of psychology behind brand. And that's another big topic in the book, is the psychology, the consumer psychology behind branding. So a lot of things that, like I said, I think the biggest challenge you see is you have to ask yourself as an owner, if you were to truly look at your own brand and reflect on it and be honest with yourself about it and say, does this branding reflect who I am today? Or does it reflect who I was 2, 3, 4, 10 years ago when I started this company? Right. And I think that ultimately there is usually a disconnect between the reality of what they do today versus what's personified in a brand that was created years ago. And again, like, you bootstrap the startup, you don't have the funds maybe to invest in branding, and you put a logo on the side of the truck that maybe the sign guy did, or your friend did, or whoever did, right? And you go with it and you get to a certain point. That's great. But is it going to take you to where you want to go is also the other questions. And you could look at guys like Tommy Mello. Like we rebranded Tommy Mello at A1 Garage when Tommy was at like 35 million in revenue.
Yeah.
Imagine that. Imagine you're at 35 million in revenue and you're saying to yourself, my brand sucks. My brand isn't going to get me to where I want to go. My old benchmarks, what Tommy had done to get to 35 million was remarkable. Like he was killing it. But here's a guy that was not complacent and knew that where he wanted to go, he couldn't get there if he maintained that old brand. So we fixed that. And I think it was 3 years or 4 years after, he went from 30 million in revenue to 300 million in revenue.
Oh, that's crazy.
I'm not going to say it's 100% because of that brand, because Tommy's Tommy's Tommy, right? He's insane. But Tommy was running into that issue with average tickets, where what he was trying to sell his jobs at didn't really match with how he was perceived. His trucks were awful. The wraps looked terrible. The branding looked just amateurish. And here he is trying to command premium pricing for his work. And there's that disconnect, right? So we started running into kind of that a little bit. And, when he reached out to me, I'm like, Tommy, it just doesn't look like a premium company right now. It looks like a company that should be cheap. And you're trying to ask for higher dollars. And that's why the close rates were not as good as they became, because the perception wasn't there.
So his ticket price obviously went up after that.
Oh, yeah.
Amongst other things.
Yeah.
I mean, even, Utterly Gutters, I actually got a podcast with Chester coming up in about a week or so. But
okay, cool.
I seen the growth. Yeah, I seen the growth. I seen him change it. And then, boom, the guy blew up like 40% growth in 2 years.
The marketing spend that he had to do doesn't correlate, right? So he didn't need to spend a ton of money to grow 40% because he had a brand that was remarkable. That's the part that so many guys just don't understand. And they just get so upset when they look at their digital marketing spend. They're pissed off at how much it's costing per lead, and their acquisition costs are through the roof. They're just spending $200-$300 to acquire a customer on a $800-$900 average ticket. Like, I get the struggles, right? But so many of these guys are just virtually invisible in the community that they're trying to win. It's just like, hey, what can we be doing to make ourselves visible? And even looking at the stuff that Chester does beyond just having a great brand is he participates in the community, right? So he puts the brand right in front of the people he's trying to sell. He goes to the 4th of July parades. He sponsors the little leagues. He does all those things that are not expensive.
He's got some nice TikToks,
but have impact. Yeah, and he does crazy TikToks. Like, his TikToks are funny. Like, I like enjoy watching them, and they're super funny. And again, like, look at the effort he's put into those non-traditional types of engagements within the community, versus just saying, you know what, screw it, I'm just going to keep paying Google. I'm just going to keep paying Google. Like, give them more money. I need more leads. It's like, and you don't see the results of what Chester and others are doing like that immediately. It's not like you go to a community event and you get 50 leads. You know what I mean? You should get some leads, right? But it's long term, right? Because not everybody needs your service at that very moment. But what we're trying to do is, how do I live in your mind rent free? So in 6 months, you know what? It's the fall. All the leaves are down. I need my gutters clean. What was the name of that company we saw at that parade? Oh, yeah, Utterly Gutters. Yeah. Let me call those guys up instead of gutter company near me. And now I'm paying for that lead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I guess branding is a little bit expensive up front, but I mean, ultimately, you're saying it's going to make everything cheaper.
Yeah. Let's put it this way. No one goes through the process of getting rebranded, and 6 months after that process says, oh my God, we spent way too much money on branding.
Yeah.
The number one thing that everyone says to us is, I wish I had done this sooner.
Yeah.
Without fail. That's what everyone says. I wish I had done this sooner. And I get it. Not everyone understands how this will affect all those other things. But when you think about, just the cost of marketing an unremarkable brand, you want to pay that forever, or do you want to pay something once, get it right, and know that everything else will be 10 times more effective because you have a brand that is sticky, memorable, delivers promise, all those other things.
Do you help people strategize with naming?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We renamed probably about 60 or 70 home service companies last year. And like I said, like, I'm not happy when I have to rename a company. I wish they had got it right when they first started. But again, not everyone knows what they need to be thinking about when naming their company. I'll just name it after myself. I'll name it after the initials of my kids or stuff like that.
Easy to get wrong.
Yeah, and it's horrible because you're gonna have to work so much harder to overcome that.
I'm actually in a position right now where one of my companies, everybody likes the name, but the name needs to change. And because I named it Griswold's Christmas Lights, and I can't trademark it. It looks nice. People love the name, but I can't. Yeah. I'm like bottlenecked to what I could do here because I want to expand.
Yeah.
And so, I could
have
did it from different breeds ago.
And to your point, like, trademarking is a huge part of our process, right? So, I think people also can get themselves in trouble by picking names that they can't trademark, or that the trademark belongs to someone else.
Yeah.
And we've seen so many instances of that where they name something, they think it's clever, original, and they're like, oh, well, they're not in my state, so I can use this name. And it doesn't work that way. Like, federal supersedes state. Federal is across the whole country. And so for us, that's the hardest part of our job, is not only coming up with a unique name that does all the things we need to do, has a promise, has an inferred visual maybe that goes with it, uses maybe rhyming or alliteration, all those things that make a good name. But now we have to make sure that name you can federally trademark, because that's the gold standard, right? Because imagine maybe one day you want to sell to private equity, or maybe you want to sell this business, and the private equity company that wants to buy you is considering opening up 5 other locations, or they already own 5 other gutter companies or roofing companies, and they want to use this brand in those markets. Well, if you have the federal trademark, they've got a lot more latitude. So that intellectual property has value at that point. So definitely something that I think people, don't understand enough about it. I think their lawyers are like, oh, well, as long as it's good in the state, if you check the state registry for that LLC and no one has it, you can use it. And it doesn't always actually work that way. You got to check.
They might get a letter in 2 years and now you're in a situation.
Yeah, exactly.
I just seen it happen. Actually, I just seen a gutter company have someone pop in the area with a really similar name, and he had the trademark, and he made the guy change it.
Yeah, because you have to enforce it too, especially if you own it. If you let it go and you let other people use it without sending them a cease and desist, at a certain point, it becomes considered to be public domain. So you have to actually enforce the trademarks that you've acquired and make sure that you're monitoring that. So
a few years could go by and then your trademark is worthless. Maybe
it's not really worthless, but you start losing the ability to defend if you have not taken action. So they'd be like, well, we've been using it for 5 years. Nobody said anything to us. Right.
Yeah.
So, it's usually as soon as you see it is when you want to start taking action on it and, getting the lawyers involved. And it sucks. Like, I hate when it happens to companies. We've seen it happen so many times where we've named the company and another branding agency has literally stolen the same name and sold it to one of their clients. And then our client has had to send them a cease and desist. And it's just like, there's a huge responsibility in naming. And I think, unfortunately, some of the people that are in this space do not do enough due diligence about that particular service.
I guarantee you 95% of people don't.
Yeah.
How do you even check if something's trademarked?
So the federal government has a website. The USTPO website is the Trademark and Patent Office. So you can do some searches in there. However, we do preliminary searches in there, and we're pretty skilled about looking at all the different categories and what you need to be searching on. But we never present names until we vet them with an actual trademark attorney. So we may look at that website and determine that we don't see any conflicts, but they have better tools and better knowledge and expertise to figure out if there's a potential issue with any names that we're proposing. So we definitely rely on the trademark attorneys. That's part of our process in naming a company is involving attorneys.
Yeah. Okay.
It's too much risk. It's honestly just too much risk, because imagine that we gave someone a name that they later find out that they can't use, and now they've got 6 trucks wrapped, and they've got a website, and they've got
big financial risk.
So we definitely do our homework on that part.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Something I've been wanting to ask you. I noticed that like you stay away from a lot of phone numbers, or you keep phone numbers really small on the box trucks. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, for us, when you honestly think about phone numbers in general as a means to communicate or a means to contact someone, I would ask you this question, Tim. Honestly, when was the last time you took out your phone and you literally dialed 10 random digits from something? Right? So the reality is, on a well-branded vehicle, it's actually the least important part of the messaging. The way we look at it in terms of priorities, we say that the brand is the most important. Second most important thing is the website address. Third most important thing is a tagline. And the fourth, which I say is optional, is a phone number.
Yeah.
Because honestly, like, are you saying that if you don't have a phone number on the side of your truck, that no one will know how to contact you?
Yeah.
They might not know how to contact you if you have a shitty brand. I'll give you that. So often you see these truck wraps and the phone number is huge and the logo is terrible. And I'm like, I know why you need a big phone number, because either I can't read the name of your company, or no one's ever going to remember the name of your company. Like, so those are things where I always say, like, the bigger the phone number, the weaker the brand. Right. Yeah. That's sort of, my vernacular for that. But it's really honestly not the way most people are going to contact you, especially if you have a name that's easy to remember, easy to spell. They're just going to go on Google and type in the name.
Right.
And then if you do it right, they're going to have a book now button right there. So I don't even have to talk to someone. A lot of people don't want to talk to anyone.
It's true.
If I dial the phone, I got to talk to someone, right? So that's the other piece of it. But I think also people think about trucks in the wrong manner, and they think that this is supposed to be a direct response type of advertising. Truck wraps, billboards, they are not direct response. They are outdoor advertising. They're brand building. Like that's their primary purpose. It is not direct response. But again, if we didn't have a phone number, you're saying no one would be able to figure out how to contact you? Like,
Yeah.
really? Like that thing called Google, like we don't know how that works, I guess, right?
Is that helping SEO rankings when they're going to Google instead of just typing in the phone number and now you got someone searching it?
Not necessarily in that particular context.
Okay.
But again, I think people, it's funny because people make the argument of saying, well, I get so many phone calls off of my truck. And a lot of times it's, again, I went to the website first and then I clicked call now. So
Yeah.
it's still actually coming from the website. It's not
Yeah,
actually
yeah,
coming from the people dialing the phone. But listen, it's all good. Like we still put phone numbers on probably 50% of the trucks we design. But if it interferes with my layout, if it interferes with what I want to do with the brand itself, I don't have to have it. I always tell this story too. Like one of the largest plumbing and HVAC companies in Ohio is called Eco Plumbers, and they're at 60 or 70 million dollars in revenue. There is not a phone number on any one of their vans.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, how are they getting contacted? Well, the
Another
website
name.
address is geteco.com. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure I could remember that more easily than 10 random phone numbers or digits, right? So listen, it's not that it's terrible to have a phone number on your truck wrap. Just make sure it doesn't come at the expense of your branding in the process.
Mhm. Yeah, I've noticed how when you do have them, you got it nice and small and it looks nice and clean, and it's not the main attraction.
Exactly. That's exactly the right way to look at it. It should never be the main attraction. You see guys on different Facebook groups like, make the phone number bigger. And I'm like, no, don't make the phone number bigger.
And you're not a fan of QR codes either?
I'm not a fan of QR codes. That could probably be an entire podcast, but I just, again, tend to look at it like it is not meant to be direct response. So if you've ever tried to scan a QR code while you're driving, I tried to do it a few times while my wife was driving. It's pretty difficult. I get it when they say, well, what about when it's parked? And I say, okay, so the truck is parked. They're looking at your truck. If you did not have a QR code, again, are they unable to contact you? Will they not know what to do? Will they not be able to figure out how to get in touch with you? Oh, but it makes it so much easier. And I'm like, okay, I guess just saying, hey, Siri, get me the website address for this is that much more hard. Like, so again, you want to put a QR code, listen, knock yourselves out. We've never used one on any of the truck wraps we've designed. Oh my God, Siri thinks I'm talking to her now.
That's funny.
Siri thought I was talking to her already. See? So I just think typically they come at the expense of branding as well. You see some guys, oh, let's put a huge QR code on the side of the truck. And I'm like, oh my God, like keep it about your brand. Don't keep it about those types of things. Again, if it's well branded, I can see the website address. I know how to get in touch with you. I don't need a QR code to get there. But again, people will want to argue that particular point. It'll be a controversial thing. Listen, put a QR code on your truck. It's all good. I won't be mad.
Yeah. I was looking at your post this morning because you had a list of mistakes. I'm like, man, I got a picture on there. I got a QR code on there. I'm like, damn it.
Yep. Yeah, I figured like I knew on that post today that people were going to get upset that I said don't use a QR code, but rage baiting a little bit, but not really. We're not big fans of them. Like on direct mail, yes. Other marketing mediums, yes, absolutely, but typically not on outdoor. It's the same reason why you wouldn't put a QR code on a billboard.
Plus, you think it kind of clutters things up too?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly. So keeping things clean, keeping it focused on the most critical things, and the most critical thing is your brand, the promise that's inferred maybe with your tagline, and again, a website address, making it easy for me to get in touch with you.
Now, speaking of website addresses, how important is it to have the company name as the website address?
I mean, generally speaking, I prefer if the URL has your name. Now, sometimes you can't get the exact name of your company as a URL or as a .com. So sometimes we put the words call in front of it. So like call kickcharge.com, right? Something like that. so that I still have the brand name. I have almost a call to action by putting the words call in
I
front
like
of
that.
it. And now I could almost more easily recall that website address later on. And again, that's sort of the challenge with phone numbers, is there isn't a great mechanism, unless it's even vanity numbers have their own set of issues. But phone numbers are just in general harder to remember. Like, when you get a two-factor authentication and it sends you the 6-digit number, like you can't
Sure.
remember the 6 digits when
I
you're
know.
trying to log into Netflix. Like, seriously. And now we want people to remember 10 digits of a phone
Yeah.
number. Like, I don't know, at least I can't remember things like
Maybe
that.
30 years ago they would, some of these old guys, they're because they're used to that. They're, I'll go up to someone will have like their whole credit card number. They'll start riddling off to me. I'm like, I wish I could do that.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you think is the biggest mistake people make, branding, or let's just say wrapping a vehicle? What's the biggest mistake they make in wrapping a box?
I think part of the biggest mistakes that made originate with the brand itself, right? So it's nearly impossible to have an effective truck wrap design without first having effective branding, right? So if you don't have a solid foundation, it is really hard to have a truck wrap that works the way, or works optimally, I would say, right?
Mhm.
So we have a ton of people that love our work, love our truck wraps and stuff, and they're like, hey, here's my logo. We want you to use this on our trucks, and because that foundation isn't there, we can't take on that project. I'm not going to take money for something that I know will not deliver the results that you were expecting from us. And
Mhm.
also, it will never look like the work that you love so much,
Mhm.
mainly because, again, that foundation isn't solid for us to build an effective wrap on. So that's typically where the initial problem is you don't have something that is worthy of that particular canvas, or able to maximize that particular canvas, whether it's illegible lettering, or weak illustration, or a poorly constructed mascot. Like, all those things will hamper your ability to make it work and function well in that particular environment. So make sure the foundation is solid before you start putting it on things. Otherwise it just will be marginalized. Can it work? Yeah, I mean, there's degrees of working, right? It will be functional, but a lot of times it will be unremarkable, right? So you look at that and you say, well, I can read the name. Okay, cool. I can see their web address. Cool. Is there a promise inferred? Do I expect a great deliverable from this company? Probably not, unless we have those fundamentals dialed in.
Do you hate house logos as much as I do?
I'm very fond of the 3-peak rooftop logo, because I've never seen that done before. It's
Yeah.
super unique and classy. Listen, I think, like I said earlier, like if you go on Google and you literally type in, roofing company logo, and you see 1,000 logos that pop up and they all look just like yours.
Yeah.
Why do you think Mrs. Jones would ever recall your particular logo? What about your rooftop logo is causing her to say, oh my God, these guys must be the best?
Yeah.
And it's not. Like, it just doesn't function that way. So, the more you blend in, and that's what the book talks about, branded, not blanded, the idea of blanding or blending in, the more unremarkable your logo is, just the more it's going to cost you to acquire that customer, because there's no reason why they would remember it. Like, honestly, can you imagine a home service show where you've got Utterly Gutters next to you, and then you've got M&R Roofing, and your M&R Roofing, I should say, right?
Yeah.
Like, who are you going to remember?
Yeah,
like,
utterly.
honestly, it's kind of a no-brainer at that point. We did a brand for a garage door company that was called originally Garage Door Solutions, right? It sounds like, well, okay, I understand what they do. Of course, it sounds more like a search term than a brand name, right? Garage Door Solutions. I might type that into Google, but it doesn't sound like the name of a company. And we renamed them Jolly Goat, and it's Jolly Goat Garage.
Jolly Goat?
Jolly Goat.
Jolly Goat.
Yeah, and they literally bring live goats to the home service shows that they go to. And the families flock to them. They bring their kids. They want pictures with the goats.
That's genius.
You know what I mean? And it's just like, would you want to do that if it was called, garage door solutions. Like, what about
Couldn't
that
do
is
it.
interesting to me as a homeowner? And so you go to that show, you see the goats, you see the logo on the side of the truck, you go home, and 2 months later, you need a garage door. Like, you think you've forgotten about Jolly Goats, or,
No.
but you've probably forgotten about M&R Roofing,
Yeah.
right? Why would I remember that? Right. So, those are definitely some things to think about as you consider your own brand.
Yeah, no, that's genius. Huh. What do? You just brainstorm? You just,
There's a lot of really smart people here.
You got
So
a
yeah,
team.
we have a team. We have a team of about 4 people that do naming, and then we have at this point I think we have 8 full-time brand designers who create the brand strategy and then the logos and the truck wraps and all those other things. And then we have a whole digital marketing team that does digital marketing, websites, and stuff.
Okay. What's your perspective, or what's your perception on the gutter marketing, or just the gutter business in general, as far as where they're at with branding as a whole?
Yeah, it's funny. I spoke at, I think it was called 𝐑𝐄𝐀𝐃𝐃,
Yep.
like a year or so ago, and got to meet a lot of great people there. But what struck me is you walk through and you see all the people with their logos on their shirts. Again, it was just how many of them were unremarkable. So I think as a general statement, the gutter industry has not particularly embraced how important branding truly is. And it kind of reminds me a little bit almost of the garage door space probably 4 or 5 years ago, before Tommy Mello really started talking about how important branding was after we had rebranded him. And so I think what's cool about that, if you're in the gutter space, honestly, and it may sound self-serving, whether or not you ever use us or not, I think the point is still that there's a lot of opportunity in that particular market because so few guys are branded well, right? So what would happen if you had the best brand in your market? Like, I would be scared shitless right now if I was in the same market as Utterly Gutters.
Oh yeah.
Like, how do I compete with that?
Yeah.
Like, but how many markets are there like that, where there is someone like him with this amazing brand? Probably not many.
Not many. And even in big areas where I know that there's 200, 250 gutter companies, I don't think that there's that many people just killing it like that on the branding.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, looking at it from that perspective, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity for companies that really understand how to build a disruptive brand and how to leverage it in their marketplace, and how to become less dependent on some of these other paid strategies that everyone hates. Like, no one likes writing a check to Google every month. And it's one of the most common, complaints that every home service owner has about their marketing is they hate how much they're dependent on Google to deliver leads. But I know it's not sexy, like we talked about earlier. It's not sexy to go to a home show. It's not sexy to go to the 4th of July parade or the Halloween parade. But those are all the little touch points that really can anchor you into that community and make them know who you are and that you're there to serve them. So they're not expensive either. Like, honestly, when you think about, like, oh my God, like, what would it cost you to put the banner in the Little League right field, or to sponsor the entire team of kids on that softball team and have your name on the back of their jersey? Like, what are we talking about? A couple $100, but yet we're okay with spending $200 a lead on Google. Like, that's okay to us. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I think, going back to some of the grassroots efforts, I think is where a lot of guys can do, make that dollar go even further, right? Become visible. But the only way you maximize those opportunities is if you have a brand that is truly remarkable. You can do all those things, but if you have a forgettable brand, it's hard to be recalled later on, right?
Yeah.
So I think looking at it from that perspective, don't be so dependent and relying on just digital to generate all your leads. Think about what you can do to become visible in that community, not just online, but in person. And I think that that's something that a lot of guys don't focus on.
And then another thing, I guess, if you're a startup company, you really nail the branding, people won't know that you're a startup company.
Oh, exactly.
Like, I'll tell you a quick story. When I first started the Christmas light business a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Now, I think I could improve my branding. I think that you might be doing it one day, but I had a nice wrap, and it was nice. And my website, I had an office, just everything was professional. It was the first season, and we're doing a HOA. I had three of my guys there, and I was just stopping by at the job, and the guy says to me, "Hey Tim, how long have you been doing this?" And I was honest. I'm like, "This is my first season." And he had someone with him, and he looked at him, and he just says, "I think he's joking." I didn't say anything. But if you nail it right, they're not going to know. Like, someone sent me a business card yesterday. He just started his company, and he has right on the card, like, founded in 2026. I'm like, don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And Tim, I had this called out in my book, and I want to just talk about this for 1 second, because this is when we touched upon early on the KPIs. So one of the case studies I have in the book is about a company that was previously called ACO Gutters, right? So it's got the problem of the initials. Like, why would I remember that particular name, ACO Gutters? Yeah, right. It doesn't really roll off the tongue. Doesn't mean anything to most people. And the owner, his name is Dave Acosta, and we renamed him Geek Guards, right? Geek Guards. Okay. And they do gutter guards and they do traditional gutters. So these are some of the stats that happened, as far as booking rates and close rates. And just listen to this for a second, right? So revenue before rebranding was 600,000. And after rebranding, this is 2023. And in 2024, they did 2.8 million. So they 4x'd the business in 1 year, right? So they went from 600 to 2.8 million. And the booking rate, listen to the booking rate. This is where it gets crazy, right? 52% before rebranding, and it was 77% after rebranding. Close rate went from 49% to 69%. And this is the best part. Average tickets went from $1,800 to $3,200. Right? And this is what it looks like if you guys watch it later on. But that's what the actual brand looks like.
Yeah, I mean, that's sexy, man.
And they look like a franchise now, right? They don't look like a 1 or 2 truck operation.
No.
And Geek Guards, you got the alliteration, you've got the graphic of the geeky looking superhero, right? So you've got all the things to aid in recognition, but the numbers are insane. Like, honestly, that's just crazy. Like 600 to 2.8 million 1 year after rebranding. And again, when we talk about opportunity, you talk about like all the leads that are coming in to your business, and we're only closing 50%. What would happen to your business if you went from a 50% close rate to a 77 close rate? What would that mean in terms of revenue? Right? So
because you're not paying more for leads, you're just closing more of them.
You're just closing more, right? Because that's the constant criticism of the digital marketing company.
Goes down.
But they were like, I need more leads. It's like, well, what about if you could maximize all the leads that you were getting and you were closing more of them? Wouldn't that be beneficial to you? Wouldn't that lower your ad spend? All those things. So just one example, and they're crushing it. And ACO Gutters, like, why would I remember that? Why would I feel something about that? And the numbers prove it. Like, the numbers don't lie. Like, you can't really make up the numbers. So, I just think so many guys are fighting this uphill battle. And if they could get that fundamental foundation fixed, ultimately, it may feel like, oh my God, this is so much money to rebrand, to rewrap my trucks, to get new uniforms. I mean, if you went from 600 to 2.8 million in 1 year, would you be worried about the $20,000 or $30,000 you spent on rebranding? Did you spend once? You spent one time?
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah.
You'll be spending that every year on ads if you don't.
Exactly. That's the way it is. Like, you want to spend over time forever, or do you want to just spend once to fix it and then never have to spend it again?
Yeah. No, that's a nice brand that you got there.
So nice.
Is that one of the first gutter companies you rebranded, or?
It was definitely an earlier one. Yeah. Like I said, we haven't done a ton. Gutter Gliders is another one that has a really cool brand.
Oh yeah, I've seen them.
We renamed them also. I don't remember what their old name was, which is proving my point.
So name is almost always a problem.
Often it's a problem. Yes. Yeah.
Like, how often? Like, half of the people that come to you?
I would say if we did about 250, 275 rebrands last year, and about 60 of them we renamed. So 1 in 4, roughly.
So you'll tell someone if it's just you can't work with it, like they just got this crazy name and it's just.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly want to advise you on, the pros and cons, and making sure they understand the obstacles or the challenges with whatever name they have. Some names you can't change. Like some names are too far gone from a revenue perspective that it's too disruptive to change, right? So if you're at, 8, 9, 10 million in revenue and you've been using that name for 10 years, well, no, I'm not going to change your name, right? That ship has sailed.
Just it'll do too much damage going backwards.
Yeah. So typically, if you're, 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 2, 3 years, there's usually not enough of a downside to outweigh renaming.
What is the biggest?
I was gonna say, for all the companies that we've renamed, we've never seen a company go backwards.
What's the biggest company you've renamed? Have you taken something large?
I would say the biggest ones we've done have probably been maybe 7.5 to 8 million in revenue, but they had more fundamental issues, whether it was phonetics, you couldn't spell it, you couldn't, when it was spoken, you didn't know how to say it. So when you think about the impact of that on like radio, for example, or TV advertising, stuff like that. So you have to really look at that too. And sometimes you can have a bigger company that even though they're at that high level in revenue, they're still virtually invisible in the community. And so you look at that too. So there's different parameters to assess brand equity before you make those decisions and say, hey, you should definitely change your name. But it's not an automatic thing. There's got to be a few hundred examples of last name brands on our website that we've done. I mean, 𝐑𝐄𝐀 Air Conditioning that we rebranded is a last name, 𝐑𝐄𝐃, 𝐃ETTL. It's hard to spell, but it'll keep you cool. Like they literally had to make a tagline to talk about how hard the name was to spell. And that's the tagline. It's hard to spell, but it'll keep you cool, right?
So you turn it into like an advantage.
Yeah, but that was, that's probably a $300 or $400 million HVAC company now, but they were 5 million when we rebranded them.
Wow.
So it can be done for sure. But
you branded a lot of companies that have really went really far.
What's interesting is, a few years ago, people want to debate with us sometimes whether or not mascot branding is better than non-mascot branding. So I decided to look at the companies that we had rebranded that were all north of 10 million in revenue. And believe it or not, there was I think at this point, it's over 120 companies that we've rebranded that are now north of 10 million in revenue. Most of them were under 10 million. It represents something like $2.5 billion of total combined revenue. But the point I was going to say is, like, when people ask that question just about mascots or non-mascots, out of the 100 that we counted, 51 had a mascot and 49 did not have a mascot. So people are like, oh my God, like mascots, you have to have a mascot, or definitely, I'm like, you don't have to have a mascot. And it's not the right solution in every particular instance. But yeah, we've done a lot of pretty large companies, obviously Tommy Mello's A1 Garage, Eco Plumbers is another, I think, $100 million company in Ohio. 𝐑𝐄𝐀, like I said, is a huge company. So yeah, we've done some pretty big companies out there. Peterman Brothers also is a really big company we've done the branding for. But
the mascots, if it makes sense. It's all if it makes sense.
If it makes sense, I think lately mascots have gotten a bad name because there's a ton of really, really awful mascot brands being done, right? So it can really work against you if they're not done professionally. If they look amateurish, then your business will look amateurish as well. But there is a way to do mascot branding that still communicates promise, still looks professional. But a lot of the really low budget branding companies that are doing that work do not do it well. And I get the hate on mascots that some owners have because there's just a lot of crap being put out there. So I get it. But what's ironic is, honestly, certain markets don't have any. You know what I mean? And I always like to make decisions about whether you should be mascot or not. I mean, sometimes the name dictates whether it will be a mascot. Like Utterly Gutters, you're not going to make it a U and a C or U and a G as a logo, right? You miss the whole opportunity to capitalize on the name. So certain names almost have to be a mascot. However, It really depends on the market. That's really what you should be examining when you're thinking about
Ah.
what strategy you want to use. If there is a market and there's 10 other mascot-based gutter companies, well, don't be the 11th.
So when you're looking at, branding someone, you're kind of looking at the whole market in that area to make
Exactly. You look at the competitors. So we do a competitive analysis of who we're competing against. We look at what every one of their trucks look like. We look at their social media presence and their brand voice. We look at what the logo and the uniforms look like. Those are all things that we want to know so that when we choose a strategy for you, we know that in this market, we're not going to be confused with somebody else. We're not going to look like anyone else, and we're going to be able to own. Even colors are like a huge piece of brand because we want to pick colors that no one else in the market is currently using, because I don't want anyone to look at my van quickly and associate it with someone else. Right?
Do you think about the psychology of colors as well?
It's an interesting question about the psychology of colors, and I talk about it in the book. In my mind and in my viewpoint, I pick colors first based on market, second based on psychology. Okay. Right? So when you think about different colors communicate different things, that's definitely part of what you want to think about. However, if that boxes me in and it means I can't use this color that no one else in my market is using, I'm going to pick that over psychology first, mainly because I still do not want my brand colors associated with anyone else in my market.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because you don't want to look like them, so you're trying to make sure that you're completely different.
Exactly. Like when we rebranded Tommy Mello's A1 Garage, Tommy's original colors were black and red. I said, Tommy, listen, I can't personify premium with black and red, right? It just doesn't work, right? It also doesn't feel like a color scheme that is warm, that's inviting.
It's like aggressive, right?
Women. What's that?
It's like an aggressive.
It's a very masculine is really what the color scheme was. But the basics of his truck wraps at that point were predominantly red. So I said, listen, we're going to keep the red because there was too much equity at that point, right? Mm-hmm. But I introduced dark brown and ivory. So his palette became red, dark brown, ivory, and very deliberately picked those colors. First of all, no one in the market was using them, right? And then I knew with the brown and the ivory, I could soften the appeal, right? I could make the brand feel more approachable to women, more premium. So again, very deliberately chose those colors based on market and based on what the emotive characteristics of the brand should communicate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. How did you learn about all these colors and matching them together? Is this something that over the years experience or?
Yeah, I mean, certainly a lot of experience. I studied a ton on the topic of consumer psychology and the psychology behind branding. I mean, I was my wife always thought it was crazy that I wanted to go to the supermarket, and I would go to the supermarket, I would do the shopping, but I'm there looking at branding. I'm there looking at the things on the aisle that attract my eye. I'm looking at color schemes. I'm looking at things like that. And I'm saying, well, why did I turn my head to look at that? Like, what caused me to look at that? And when you think about branding and the concept of disruption, it's really the same thing, right? If you're walking down an aisle, what causes you to turn your head and look at the packaging of one thing versus another? And out on the road, it's no different. Why would I look at your van versus someone else's van? What about it makes me want to learn more? So yeah, I just being pretty much obsessed on the topic since I was very, very young. So
were you an artist, or you just jumped right into,
I mean, I would say I was a sign artist, so as a hand lettering artist. One of my weaknesses is I am not an illustrator, which is why I have an amazing team of illustrators that work for me. I'm very good with letters. I'm very good with type. I'm very good with truck layouts. Billboard layouts is probably one of the favorite things I love to do, is lay out billboards. Yeah. But I wouldn't consider myself an artist in that sense because I can't illustrate. I can't draw very well. I could draw a house, like mechanical drawing I could do.
You're not going to go paint acrylics or anything.
Yeah, but I'm not going to paint, a scene of a sunset or a Bob Ross thing.
Yeah. That doesn't make any money anyways.
Probably.
Yeah. Most likely.
Yeah.
Good deal, man. So what would you say is like, if you got any last tips for anybody, like what's the number one thing they should focus on? moving forward, just thinking about their branding? And
I would just say, think about the brand and think about if it truly represents who you are today. And one of the quotes in my book that I like to say is, success in spite of a poor brand is not a valid reason to perpetuate it. And if that brand no longer represents what you've evolved into, consider making it look as good as the service you actually provide. And one thing real quick, Tim, that we didn't even touch upon is when you think about recruitment, and you've probably experienced the challenge of recruitment, and every home service owner experiences the challenge of recruitment. When people say, I can't get anyone that wants to work for me. And then you look at the brand, you look at the truck they're going to drive, you look at the uniforms that they're going to wear. And I know why people don't want to work from you. It's beyond just the salary, right? The salary is just one component of.
Doesn't feel good to work for you.
Yeah. It's like, do I want to represent this brand? Do I want to be part of this organization? And I think people, after experiencing what a brand does and what it can do, recruitment becomes less challenging at that point. I'm sure if you talk to Chester and you ask Chester, well, what was it like recruiting before, and what is it like recruiting now? And I'm
You get a ton of employees.
Yeah, two radically different, answers at that stage of where he was in the business. So people, I think, underestimate, looking beyond just having a cool logo and a cool truck wrap, which is only just one piece of branding. How does it affect culture, internal culture? How does it affect your mindset as the owner? And looking at it from that vantage point, because I will tell you that the one thing that happens after a rebrand, and again, not to keep talking about Chester, but I will say Chester's mindset about his company and where his company is going is probably very different today than it was a couple of years ago. That enthusiasm that you get and that excitement that you get, knowing that you've got this foundation, and now it's like, let's take this friggin' thing out for a spin.
That brand's ready to be franchised.
It absolutely is ready to be franchised. 1,000%. So
cool, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on here. How can people get in touch with you?
Sure, they can just go to KickCharge.com and just fill out the contact form, and we'd be happy to chat with you.
Sweet, man. We got to get you to the summit this year. We got our summit.
Yeah, when is that again this year?
We're actually flying to Louisiana end of the month to kind of iron things out, but I'm thinking it's going to be in September.
Okay.
Maybe in New Orleans.
Got it. Okay, cool.
Yeah, man. So we're looking forward to it. But I appreciate you coming on. And if you guys aren't following us, give us a like and follow. We're on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Awesome. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan, man. Appreciate it.